C-A-T-C-H-I-N-P-I-P-S. I've been C-A-T-C-H-I-N-P-I-P-S. I've been.
Hey, Charlie P, back again with another strategy. Today, we're going over my killer crossover strategy. Killer crossover strategy is the easiest one out of all of them because you don't have to go to any other chart or any other time frame except for the H1 chart. That's it. Everything you need is right here on the H1 time frame. So it's the easiest one to spot because it's the least amount to look for. Oh, let me just say this too right quick. I'm doing this video just a tad bit differently to try to make things more simplified. I've already found all the examples that I want to use. Normally I scroll through until I find it, but I just went ahead and found it ahead of time so we can cut down on the time a little bit. And also I do want to point out that there are some pairs that I don't normally trade that I'm going to go over just because I just wanted to find a little bit more examples to show you. But anyway, let us jump right into it. So rule number one. On H1, price will consolidate just above or below a 50-144 EMA crossover. So when we look, and let me go ahead and just highlight what we're looking at. Here's our area. Right here, you see the 50 EMA crossed over the 144. So, and while that's happening, price is consolidating right here. It's not really a clear up or down movement within this box that we have here. So price is consolidated. It's just kind of chopping up and down while we have an EMA crossover. That's rule number one. That's really all it is to it. It doesn't need to be overbought or oversold. That's OBOS, overbought, oversold. It doesn't need to be overbought, oversold. So as you see down here, the Ehlers Fisher is nowhere near, our 90 level. So it's not overbought or anything like that. That doesn't matter in this strategy. And also the formation will take at least a full day to complete. So you'll notice on all the examples, like this blue session box is New York session. So it kind of started forming in New York session this day. It's still going the next day in New York session. And we don't even take the entry until London session the day after that. So it's going to take at least a full day for this to form. But moving along. Rule number two, the confirmation candle body must close past the last prominent wick in the formation. Now, where have you heard that before? My last strategy video where I talked about what was my last strategy video? Oh, the Omega trade. So that's the exact same rule in my Omega trade strategy is where you have to find the last prominent wick within the formation, which here's a prominent wick right here, where price comes down and makes a little wick. You could say this one, that's fine as well. I actually would say that this right here would be the last kind of prominent wick in the formation. So we need a candle body to close past this last prominent wick. And this candle right here made that happen. It does not matter what time of day the confirmation candle happens, but as always, it does matter what time of day you take the trade. And so once again, I've put the acceptable entry times in the rules and just convert it to whatever time zone you need. I am on Central Standard Time, so convert it to whatever time zone you need to convert it to so that you know what times you can take a trade. But anyway, let's recap rule number 1 and 2. So rule number 1, price has to be consolidating just above or below the EMA crossover, the 50 to 144 EMA crossover. So here's that crossover right here. And then we see price has been consolidating just above that. Then we find the last prominent wick within that formation, which is right here. And then we need a candle body to close past that. And then we will have had a confirmation in this situation that it's a sell. After that happens, the only other thing you need to do is look for an entry. All you got to do is stay on the H1 chart and wait till price comes back and grabs the 50 EMA. The only difference between this and my other strategies is that in the other strategies, I normally have to go down to the 15-minute chart, the 15-minute time frame, and then wait on price to come back and grab the 50. On this one, you can just stay on H1 and do the same thing. So our confirmation candle happened right here. Price came down a little bit more. Then it came back up during London session and grabbed our 50 EMA, which again is the gold line. So as soon as it grabbed that 50 EMA, we hop in a trade right here. We have absolutely no drawdown, as you can see. And then you could have caught, before this day was even over, 104 pips. And then you could have, kept riding that down for a really long time. That was an amazing trade. So if you wanted to, you could have caught 300-400 pips on that trade. Let's go to another example. Here again, we've got a 50 144 EMA crossover right here. So the 50 just crossed over the 144. Price, dang, my voice cracked. Price is consolidating just above that crossover. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 says we have to find the last prominent wick within this formation. I would say this is pretty obviously the last prominent wick on this one. Technically, even though it's not wicked, you could put the say that this is it, but we'll just stick with the wicks and say that this is the last prominent wick. Then we have a very obvious candle body that closed past the last prominent wick. So now rule number 2 is met. We have a confirmation candle body that closed past the last prominent wick. And then we just stay on H1, wait on it to come back and grab the 50 EMA on H1, which happens right here. So here's our entry in New York session. We have probably 5 pips of drawdown, and then you just ride it on out. It's well over 100 pips. There's 146 pips right there so far, and it keeps going down a little while. So that's over 200 pips you could have caught on that one. One thing I do want to mention, your trade is going to, where you take the entry, it'll always happen back in on the other side of, like, wherever you draw your line, it's going to come back inside that line to give you that entry. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. And also the entry will happen either in the same session as the confirmation candle or the very next session. So in this situation, the confirmation candle happened in London session. Then in the very next session, which is New York, there's our entry. So if you have to wait more than a session for an entry, don't worry about it. Just let that one go. All right, let's go to the next example. Now, this is actually one that is not something that you would want to take. Here's where we're looking, is right here. Notice on the first 2 trades, or the first 2 setups, price kind of interacts with that EMA crossover, meaning it comes down and it kind of touches around that 50 and 144 EMA. We've got some prices. We got some areas where price is touching it. On the second example we looked at, price touched the formation, the crossover, or at least it touched the moving averages, right here. And then again, right here. Up here, this would technically be our, we've got an EMA crossover right here. Cool. Here's our last prominent wick. Here's a confirmation candle body. But notice nowhere does it really interact with the formation or that EMA crossover. It doesn't interact until the actual confirmation candle. And we want to look for interaction before a confirmation candle. So this still would have been a relatively safe trade, but I would still say just avoid it because you really don't get any good pippage out of it. Pippage, I keep saying that word. I think that was kind of made up, but yeah, y'all know what I'm saying when I say pippage. You don't get no good pippage out of this. But it crossed over, it came back. You could have gotten in the trade right here, and you would have caught approximately, oops, wrong tool there. You would have caught approximately 40 pips on this before price would have came back and, knocked you out the trade, because you catch 40 pips, you need to go ahead and adjust your stop loss to be in profit so you have a risk-free trade. But anyway, that's not really a good setup to take. Also, let's look at this down here as well, because this is also another crossover, because the EMA, the 50 crosses over the 144 right here. Now on this one, you do have interaction. And then here's where our, let me just delete this line right quick. This would be our last our last prominent wick. Here's a confirmation candle body that closes past that last prominent wick. But then it takes more than a session for it to come back and grab the 50 EMA. So because it took more than a session, if I would have gotten in the trade right here where it came and grabbed the 50, well, on this one, I just took an L. I mean, depending on how big my stop loss is, which I can look at this and just tell, like, my stop loss, yeah, that's 22 pips against me. I normally wouldn't go more than a 20 pip stop loss. So this would have, you know, barely knocked me out and then, you know, gave me roughly 50 pips of profit or whatever, or 50 pips in my direction. But again, not the best setup to take. So those are just a couple of things you want to look out for, you know, to avoid a bad setup. The next example is a buy example. So on this one, we have the 50 EMA, the 50 144 crossover right here. So the 50 is crossing over the 144 right here. And we've got price consolidating below that crossover. Okay. So next thing we have to do is find our last prominent wick in the formation, which would be right here. So we draw a line at the top of that wick. And now we need a confirmation candle body to close past that wick, which happens somewhere around here. So now in the very next session, price comes down. It grabs our gold line, our 50 EMA. I keep grabbing the wrong tools. Doggone it. Here we go. Get that box. Here's our entry somewhere up in here. So you end up catching 142 pips up in the bands. If price goes up in the bands, normally you just want to go ahead and get up out of there. So that was a good 140 something pip trade on deck. Next example. Oh, and this is a good one. All right. So I'm gonna mention something. FOMC news happened yesterday on this trade. So let me just go through the whole process right quick. So here's our EMA crossover, our 50 144 crossover. Price is consolidating just below that. Cool. So let's find our last prominent wick for rule number 2, which pretty much is dead center in the middle of the formation. And then we have a candle body. Here's our confirmation candle body that closed past that wick. In the same session, it comes down and it grabs our gold. Now, let me just say, here's why I do not get in this particular trade specifically on yesterday. Because if I go to forexfactory.com and we look at yesterday, at 1 o'clock, we had FOMC news. Now, when you're talking about FOMC, this trade happened within our appropriate trading times. Cool. But one thing about FOMC, it always happens at 1 p.m. Central Time, which is past our trading hours. That's the one day where trading past your trading time is okay. Whenever FOMC day hits, I normally wait till 30 minutes after news before I'm willing to get into a trade. So sometime around 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be willing to get into a trade on FOMC. I won't trade it before FOMC because I know, all right, let's say had I gotten to this trade right here, well, I would have ended up being about 30 pips in drawdown at some point when FOMC news hit. I know FOMC is crazy, so that's why I avoid getting in that trade on this particular day until FOMC hits. And see, they tried to trick us and say, oh, it's going down, but our formation is our formation. So we know that the market's going up because we already got that confirmation. We just have to wait on FOMC to get done with all this trickery. So basically, I mean, I can go down to the 15-minute chart just to show you a little bit better, but you see they gave us this big old wick right here. Well, once that wick kind of closed up here, it came down. Now here's my 30-minute point right here. How I said I'll wait 30 minutes after news. Well, my 30-minute mark was up right here at the bottom of this candle. So here's where I get into the trade. Then guess what? I only end up with, I keep grabbing the wrong tool, doggone it. I only end up with 4 pips of drawdown, and then it's up from there. And I mean, it went up 100 pips. Cool. So that's just something I want to point out. FOMC news, you might need to stay out of the trade until after news hits, because it's normally going to come back and the market's going to spike and go against you. But eventually it will go in the direction that we need. So these formations or these patterns, it will help you look past all the trickery that the market tries to throw at you. Sometimes you just got to be patient and wait on the right time to enter. All right, so here's an example on gold. Rule number 1 says price has to be consolidating in this situation above the 5144 EMA crossover. So here's that crossover point, and here's our consolidation. Next thing we do is find the last prominent wick, which I would say is this point right here. So let's go ahead and draw a line at the bottom of this wick right here. And then this candle body here closed past this wick. So now we have a confirmed sell. And now all we have to do is just wait on price to come back up and grab our gold line on H1. Now here's the thing on this one. The confirmation candle happened at this is the 3 o'clock a.m. candle. So at 4 a.m. this is when price came back up and grabbed our gold line. Technically 4 a.m. is an appropriate trading hour. So you could have either taken that trade right there as soon as it, came up and grabbed the gold right here. But they gave you some more opportunities in New York session. But overall, you would have taken this trade somewhere in this area and you would have caught a very quick 180 pips that day. And if you would have held it further, you could have caught upwards of 315 pips, before it did what it did yesterday. So again, great trade for 300 pips potentially. It went down in the bands. Remember I said earlier, if it hits the bands, go on and take your money. So that's how you could have known to get out on this one, with 300 pips. And then our last example that we'll go over, and I hope that this is pretty repetitive to you right now, because these are all I do is look for patterns. I'm not big on all this super intelligent analysis and stuff. Like, it sounds great and it's, makes you sound smart and all that, but there's a lot of different types of ways to trade effectively. I just happen to be a pattern trader. It makes it easier for me to see what the market's doing when I see the same thing that I've seen before, on another pair or on another day. It's like, I've seen this same pattern. That's all I look for. So again, here we have our pattern. We've got price is consolidating just above a 5144 EMA crossover. And then we find our last prominent wick, which in this one, I would probably say is right here. This one looks good too, but I don't know. This one I probably would have just put it right here. I just figured that's where I would have put it. And then we've got our candle body right here, closes past this prominent wick. And then the very next candle, so in the same session within New York, and this probably happened, this is right at 10 o'clock a.m., which is kind of almost at the end of our acceptable New York trading times. So we got up until 10:45 Central Time to take that trade. But it comes right up the next hour and it grabs our 50 EMA. So we enter just above that, or it's pretty much as soon as it touches our gold line when it came back up and grabbed it. And then that was a smooth upwards of 200 pips. So again, well, actually, because it hit the bands here. So that's 175 pips right there. So killer crossover. Really easy strategy to spot. It's a really easy strategy to catch over 100 pips dang near every time. So learn it, study it, and yeah, I will holler at y'all on the next one.